Flying notes through the hourglass. These are the songs of our lives.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am a musician, a composer, a writer, the founder of Foxy, Digitalis, and somebody who thinks about music and sound far more than is healthy. Each week, I invite on a guest and we talk about the songs and the music that have been with them along their journey. Previous guests include Jalen, Claire Rousset, Rosalie, Robert Aki Aubrey Lowe, Mark Masters, Ilyas Ahmed. There's so many. So this week, though, speaking of Ilyas Ahmed, his bandmate in Grails, Emil Amos, is on the show. And this episode is a trip. We had so much fun. We go off script. We end up in all sorts of random places. But that's because Emil's such a good storyteller and he has so many stories to tell. You should listen to his podcast, Drifter Sympathy, because again, he rules. So I did want to mention that I guess I kind of mentioned Grails about to go on tour in Europe. So tour dates are in the show notes. Go see them if you can. He's got, I think he's also in Holy Sons. He had a great solo record out last year called Zone Black, which was, I keep going back to that one. Hopefully there's some new Holy Sons this year. Lilacs in Champagne. I mean, man after my own heart. So many things going on. I can't even keep track. Anyway, we recorded this a little while back, but hey, seriously, it was a blast. I hope you all enjoy it. Stay to the end. Thanks for listening. My guest today is a musician, a songwriter, a member of Grails, a Holy Son, so many other things. I could probably keep listing things for 5 minutes, but I won't. It is Emil Amos. How's it going?
Really good.
So, we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but being not having enough hours in the day, but what are you up to these days?
I'm in grave trouble because I decided to dip into my archives and I've probably about 30 external hard drives scattered around me, and like these old like sort of discontinued digital 4-tracks and cassette 4-tracks and those big CD wallet folders, those ones where you would archive CDs. I've got all those around me, plus all my new equipment, trying to like bring out and extract all the stuff that I made probably in the 2000s, early on when my labels would either go defunct or just like the hard times, and so I've got like, I'm listening back to everything, and the amount of music that it is terrifying. It's like there's something so wrong with the person that did all that, because you can hear them on their own planet. I mean, you can hear that everybody else is out at parties and doing the things normal kids do. And I'm just like, nope, I'm just going to be alone in my basement day after day. And it's not like a sad story because here we are now, but it's a little bit weird to listen back to.
I can relate to that so much. I still have boxes of like 4-track tapes, and like I was 15, 16 years old dubbing tapes in my bedroom while everybody else was out having a good time. And again, like you, it's like it worked out. I'm not upset about it, but thinking back about it, it's like, geez, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I can say about this. Is your signal too hot? Or are you good? I'm looking at it.
I think it should be good.
Okay. I was just talking to one of the guys in the band, the Swirlies, and I went over to his house in like 90 two or three when they were at the top of their game, and she sang on the Bubble and Scrape by Sabado, and I slept there and like took a bunch of acid and ate a potato or something and just got high all night or something, and there just like the amount of history that's buried in the 90s, for people
Yeah.
like us, is like an insurmountable bit of information that's kind of like never really going to come to light necessarily unless kids get more interested in what you were talking about, which is that mid 90s sort of tape trading world, early 90s. But that's not like the worst thing in the world. The thing is to transmute all of that energy you put into that stuff, talking about like what you did too, like all those
Hmm.
boxes of tapes, transmute it into something of use now. That's the beauty of it. You put in the work, now make it like useful to someone or yourself somehow now. And I think as long as we do that, there's nothing too morbid about
Yeah.
all those sort of lost years or anything. But I mean, I'm not like holding my breath waiting for Shrimper to come back in style next year, but I've got ways, I've got a platform, right? So
Yeah.
I've got Grails Records, I've got my own podcast where I tell the whole story of the 90s, and I've got all the shit where like even if people don't know what I'm doing, I can subliminally like shove it into their ears, like
Right.
through Grails Records, even the new one, and I would have to find a new one's kind of a hard one to find an obvious correlation, but I still use lo-fi methods on every single track. I mixed that whole record, at my
Hmm.
house using all the things I learned from the cassette 4 tracks. So I'm just trying to like spin it into something positive.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think about that a lot, especially like it's 30 years, however many years later, and I still, yeah, my approach when I'm mixing on, whatever digital workstation I'm using, like it all goes back to those 4-track tapes and like that. I kind of have the same approach. Like it's evolved, but it's still the same thing. And
I guess like technically that's not too dissimilar from like if you were talking to like an old 80s techno dude right now, or like maybe Marley Marl might not be the best example, but like an early hip hop dude. I'm saying this kind of brutally because it's like I don't know if people are buying new Marley Marl music, but
right.
like, or Bomb Squad, but like if there was an analogy, like if you were to interview Prince Paul right now, someone who's still kind of working hard, I'm assuming he is, uh, like it wouldn't be too different from us, our conversation about lo-fi and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's I mean, there's I interviewed last year as a guy in the UK who he started this blog last year where he's going through and like writing reviews of every single tape that was on Union Poll. Like started at number 1 and is going through, I think it's either 73 or 76. And so and he and I talked about that, and we were talking about how it's like a lot of this, there's like no record of it. Any like, everyone thinks, oh, everything's on the internet, but a lot of this stuff, it exists in like these in my closet, in someone's, a box under their bed. And
Uh-huh.
I it so much, but like a lot of these people are still around. Like I don't know. I think it's just, to me it feels like there's this lost history that,
Uh-huh.
to me and obviously I'm super biased because it was super important to me, but it feels really important just in general that I think I wish people knew. And yeah, and like you,
Well,
I try to, get it out there and not sneak it in, but kind of sneak it in, where I can with the various things I'm doing.
yeah, I'm sure that people like not Andy Warhol specifically, but I'm sure that people who like were branded as like the new school have always sort of like um Bob Dylan has some quote about that. Like he's like, I was the last dude to see the traditional old school motherfuckers. And the kids that came after me just the next year they missed all that. And because they weren't connected to that, they didn't have their vocabulary set up, And so
Yeah.
I think that one thing that makes me really happy, I think that my buddy Jed Bindeman in Portland, Oregon is kind of, I think he's starting a revolution in a way. He basically has, I've heard rumors of like 30,000 cassettes, but he basically hits the Goodwill bins, but also Calvin Johnson and all these people have hooked him up with their entire cassette collection. Like,
Oh, wow.
we're talking about like the first demos that Daniel Johnson and Lou Barlow sent out, to
Right.
Calvin Johnson, mint condition, sitting there, probably played once. Jed has inherited all this stuff, but so now I just named like two very famous people, but underneath that
Yeah.
is Jed has like basically stubbornly and beautifully and religiously has an attitude that he's like not really interested in like things that were mass produced. So his collection, if I say 30, 40,000 cassettes, we're talking about just homemade demos that were never even like sent off to be manufactured as a tape. So we're talking about Kinko's tapes or whatever that somebody made for one other person or two people just to collaborate with. And we're talking about as early as like, 1980. We're talking about like dudes that were in bands next to Throbbing Gristle nobody's heard of. We're talking about everything. And so Jed's attitude is that he has freedom to spend, which is an arm of revenge. But like he also has now started for years now, has been doing concentric circles. And what my point is there is that if Jed can single-handedly make it sort of cool, I mean, it's not like hyper cool because not a lot of people know about it yet, but like if he can make it cool that a cassette that no one ever heard in 1982, and we're not talking about trendy new age Japanese minimal bullshit. Like we're talking about real motherfucking people in their basements getting weird. And so if he can make that kind of cool now in 2024, and people are catching on, like the Corolla Bear record sold out twice. If people are catching on to that and he's around, focusing on, say, 1982 or 1988 or whatever, that needle is going to move forward, right?
Yeah.
So in 10 years from now, your dream is probably going to start coming true. That shit is going to get completely documented. So I would say before you get too bitter, let's start a label.
Well, I swore I'd never start another label again, but that's awful. And that's amazing. Like Jed is, I've known Jed for a long time. Like Jed and I go way back. I think on my old label, the first ever heavy winged CDR was a thing I put out. I still remember he used to just buy stuff from me, and then he was like, "Hey, I got this band. Do you want to listen to it?" And it just fucking blew me away. But that is amazing that he, and that excites me because feels like that's in good hands with someone like Jed. So man.
Well, I mean, he's only one dude, and like I think he stands alone. I think that his understanding of private music is a kind of exquisite, not even a highbrow take. I think it's just he just sees it for what it is. And I was just doing a podcast with him because I'm having him guest on this new season of Drifter Sympathy, and he was talking about finding the Corolla Bear tape in the Goodwill bins, and it came to me. I was like, oh, like this is the big metaphor. This is it. Like the true impetus behind all culture, the true great like sort of as he called it, the intimacy, the intimate like transmissions, the true like the best of the best. You got to go find it in the garbage. And that is the metaphor about our society, especially late stage capitalism. You got to find everything in the garbage. If it's real religion, if it's real thinking, you got to go where everybody else doesn't want to go, because where everybody else is gone and is going is fucking horseshit. So
Yep.
it's like, you got to go to the garbage. And that's what Jed's doing actually in real time for everybody. And he's providing this great, social service because he's never going to make a dime.
Right.
And we need to get that as older heads, like it's our job to make that sound fucking cool to people, And so here we go.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's like a whole. Yeah. Well, I can talk about this forever, but I'm trying not to make this like a 3 hour.
Yeah.
But I am right there with you. And that though, like that inspires me to just keep, like, I have boxes of tapes in the closet and I can't, I've moved them cross country multiple times. We've moved, and every time I'm like, God, this is a pain in the ass, but it is, I mean, it's treasure. So it's, and
there's always that phase that like an old schlubby record nerd goes through where they're like, you've been talking records with them for 20, 30 years and they're like a god, I'm thinking specifically of this guy, John Whitson, who runs Holy Mountain.
Yeah, I know,
like,
John.
I mean, his collection was insane. I would go over to his apartment and I'd just be like, I don't even know. I have no idea what the fuck this is. Because he lived in Japan and he'd kind of been collecting. And then, it's like 15, 20 years into our conversations, he's like, yeah, I sold all my records yesterday. It's like that phase that you get to. Like, I don't know if that's a freeing, beautiful moment or if there's something so deeply sad that you, in one moment, just were like, what I did with my life is like not important to me anymore. Like,
Right.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I don't need that. Half of one it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. That's man. I've contemplated it multiple, and I I've pared things down, but I can't. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hell of a thing. That's like looking into the void and figuring out, like, yeah, does everything, my whole life, was it all pointless up to now?
Totally. It's like that weird fence where like maybe as a Taoist exercise, it's like it's one of the great moments of your life and it doesn't devalue the past, but that's something you have to emotionally assess for yourself. For some people that would be a suicide. For others it would be like they would be saying it's not that I don't love the music, but I don't need to personally own it, which would be this kind of Eastern thing. I don't know. I'm not there yet, thankfully.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're here to talk about songs.
Sure.
And we should probably talk about some songs. You got a lot of really good songs to talk about, and some maybe not so good songs to talk about.
I shot them off to you. That list I shot off to you like without thinking at all. So I figure it'll create something spontaneous.
Good. Yeah. Well, it's always the interesting thing. I feel like one of the things I love about this show is seeing just how people approach it, where it's either, okay, I'm going to just do it and send it off. Or, I mean, I have people who've been working on this list for months because they can't make a decision. So, there is no right or wrong way. To start though, speaking of, we've been talking a lot about our own personal sort of histories in music and all that stuff. Let's go all the way back to, what is the first song that you can remember?
Oh, well, I may not remember everything I told you. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but that one is pretty clear to me. I mean, I can kind of remember being in diapers almost in Coconut Grove, Miami, Florida. And I can remember sort of this very specific memory. It's like a Wonder Years playback of like this kind of moment in my living room. My mom and dad were still together, which is amazing. That means I was less than 2 years old somehow. And the Beatles were always on the record player. It was the first thing I really understood, like what music was, what a band was, and of course, like Maxwell's Silver Hammer and things like that were very, child oriented, which made a lot of sense, or still kind of weirdly makes sense. That's really great music, actually. Even though people try to clown it, it's like, I mean, Maxwell Silver Hammer, even Yellow Submarine, I like it.
Yeah.
And so I just remember, I feel like I was in diapers and like, I don't know if there's a Christmas tree in the corner, but I can see it all. And I can remember like A Hard Day's Night. I would say specifically more than Sergeant Pepper's. We had like, we were somehow like the turntable had weirder records like Magical Mystery Tour on it more often. I don't know why, because it's a weird one, but like Hard Day's Night, that was kind of, pre-internet times, you just got what you got. So you're sort of living with it day in, day out, like growing with this record. And I believe the classic story is that McCartney didn't really have like an intro and George Harrison added the Spanish do 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 do, and then McCartney sings "I give her everything," and it's like, so you kind of have this schizophrenic relationship there that nobody really knew. It sounds like it was written as a Spanish song,
Yeah.
And I think in diapers, I either picked up all of that unconsciously, or I mean, Barry Gibb tells this great story about going on these cruises, like maybe from the UK to Australia, back and forth with his family, and seeing the pyramids from these cruise ships, and it being like the inception point for why he thought he could write such like bizarre, sort of fantastic, almost like Willy Wonka style, like imaginative songs. He gave himself this bizarre license, this bizarre freedom. And if you look at the history of especially the early Bee Gees stuff, I mean, the guy is probably one of the greatest songwriters of all time.
Yeah.
And he's just setting himself free to just run rampant over music genres. And so I think that maybe perceiving that McCartney Harrison moment in that song was weirdly important for me, because I was seeing the experimentation, like the kind of the fakery of just like, well, what if we make it a Spanish song,
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure I'm willing to bet $1,000 that that's probably a huge song in like Italy and Spain, and people like covered it, big like Pavarotti or fucking something,
Yeah.
So I think there's some lesson down in there that like, if you can dream it, if you can believe in it, you can carve it out, you can make it very real. But also just the sheer melodicism of that song. And I Love Her. I mean, that's kind of like, there are moments in music I could pop one on today if it was just a random ass record I'd pull up from behind my head. It could be Don't Stop Now by Guided by Voices. It could be anything. But there's songs where you're just kind of like, I don't think music gets better than that.
Yeah.
Like, and I Love Her. It's just like, that's music in a nutshell. And I think one great practitioner lesson in that is that when you listen to the Beatles, the great beauty of it is that it's a full scope, full vision, fully wrapped, a book open and closed production. It's absolutely loose and shaggy and like charismatic, but completely pro in the weirdest way. And so when you view it and you see what Ringo's doing, you see what John Lennon's doing, you see the skill level it takes to play that particular performance, it's shockingly, you don't have to be that good to make some of the greatest, maybe the greatest music ever. Like, that's the shocking takeaway.
Yeah.
Is that if the Beatles could do it, and they could do it then, you don't need these fucking producers now. You don't need all that shit. You don't need the light show. You don't need the smoke show. You don't need the dancers behind you. You don't need that fucking shit. And they proved it from the fucking get-go.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got the idea, like, you can do it. I mean, you can.
Yeah, I mean, ain't nobody got the idea no more. But
well, I mean, that's That's the problem we have now. Is it's all the idea
Yeah,
is
right.
the wells run dry. Oh no, I love that. I love the idea of Pavarotti singing, and I love her. I don't know if that's a thing that exists, but that's a thing I want to live in the world where that exists, because I mean, I love this song. I love this song so much. And I have, like, the Beatles I have very distinct memories of being super young and like Sunday mornings listening to Beatles records with my dad. And it was some of the most like formative stuff. It was Beatles records or Dylan records. Those were like his two things. And
I mean,
now,
you're not, you know, there's no avoiding the fact that you're probably never going to feel like that again. You know what I
no,
mean? It's like, you might as well just keep that goddamn memory close, because it's such a beautiful
yeah.
interchange, you know?
Well, and I think, you know, it took me a while, but because I feel like for a long time, it's like I was chasing that. And when you come to accept, like, I'm never gonna experience that or feel that again, it's freeing, and you can appreciate it. And, you know, get on with things, I guess. But
I think so. Yeah. I mean, people tend to veer away from like negative proclamations like that. But like, I just think the beauty is in embracing them, and like that God is literally actually in the gutter, which is kind of what we were saying earlier about the garbage. But like,
yeah,
if you don't embrace that shit, then you're compartmentalizing yourself, and you're not understanding yourself in a Jungian sense. You know, you can't really just block out that stuff and just hope, oh, well, the new Taylor Swift makes me feel pretty similar. It's like, bro,
yeah,
shut the fuck up.
right, exactly. Um, well, speaking of feeling things, what is a song? Well, I guess first of all, do you consider yourself a big crier? Do you cry much?
No, I mean, I think, no, my tear ducts are apparently pretty broken. But, but that question was the hardest one. That was the most stumping of the questions. But I mean, I didn't even really want to go into it, because it's like so embarrassing. But sometime around, I don't know, your weakest age. I don't know what your weakest age is, but it's definitely somewhere around like 12, 13, when you're like going to the 7th grade dances, and you're like, you know, I guess rejection is like your most terrifying frontier
Yeah,
that you can imagine. And I don't remember any particular rejections that were particularly nuclear or anything, but I do remember, like, you know, I got into skateboarding. I'm sure I was more like 11, 12. I was a real early bloomer with music, because I heard all the Black Flag and Dinosaur, Sonic Youth, and all the Speed Wheels like videos. And so I was like, went straight down to School Kids and started talking to Mac, who hadn't even started Merge yet. He was just a young kid in Superchunk in town. And I just started getting all the knowledge. I was just kind of like,
yeah,
give me this, tell me everything. And, you know, they were like amused by this bizarre little 12-year-old skateboarding kid that just wanted to know everything about Nick Drake. There was like, how is this happening? And, I think that as soon as I heard, I wouldn't say it was the first listen, but like as soon as I heard Dinosaur Jr. with Show Me the Way and stuff, and like it was Savannah Slamma. I've told the story before. It was like Caballero or somebody drops in, and it's like Jay's voice like super brutally out of tune, and just like the weird wah solos, and I was just like, whatever this is, I don't think I could perceive that it was this whole new frontier, which it was. I mean, hardcore was being completely perverted and transformed by stuff like this. They were set up by the Meat Puppets and all these other things. But so he, like, when I heard that, I was like, oh shit, like, these are my people, whether I like it or not. These are my people. And I went into School Kids, and all the other kids were like always tic tacking. You remember that sound through the CDs? That tack,
mm-hmm.
tack.
Mm-hmm.
You walk in those old music stores, and all the other kids were always tick-tacking towards the new release. They were always like, tack, 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 like grabbing Where You Been or whatever the hell was the new thing, the major label thing. And I was like, just no interest, always tick-tacking to the back, to the first record. I always wanted to know what the first gnarly weird stuff was, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just had this inclination that there was maybe something a little more familiar, like it looked kind of more like your demo tapes that you were making of your stuff at Kinko's, and so like I tic-tac to the back, and I grabbed that, you flip it over and you see the Homestead like logo, and you're just like, those are the moments, where you're like, these are my fucking people, and you don't even know where you're going, which is the beauty of the deep end. You're just swimming out the deep end, and Homestead, that's gonna show you the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this is how I'm sort of getting into the crying bullshit. But like, somehow I would go home, and there was like a time of night, and I can barely remember all of it, but it was like a certain time after dinner or something where my mom would retire and go do something, probably watch Masterpiece Theater. And the living room and the CD player, which we had just bought, it's the late 80s, and it was like our first CD player. We were a little bit late to the CDs, and I would sit there. I'd have like, I don't know, I feel like it was like an hour where I didn't have to do my homework, or it was after. It felt late. It felt sleepy. And I would put on something like the first Dinosaur record, and I would skip over to like Severed Lips. And I distinctly remember like crying to it. And I distinctly remember thinking that it felt so good. Like I wasn't sad. I was like understanding some sort of ancient pathos, some sort of tragedy vibe for the first time, because I was 13, 14 or something at that time. And so I was like, my hormones were clicking into it.
Right.
And so that my response to your question is pretty much, that's my memory, is that there may have been a George Michael song I cried to. I think that was probably, you're clicking into like some sort of rejection in science class or something that you felt. But there's something about Severed Lips, and to this day, I mean, I see these people on the internet all the time. Like, I don't know what fucking group somebody put me into on Facebook, but these people that are like, actually, the best Dinosaur Jr. record is this and that, and like, no one even likes the first one. And I'm just, as a practitioner, I'm just telling you, the fucking first record is like, it's one of the greatest things of the 1980s, and no one talks about it. It's the fact that there's so many bizarre genres, and the production is so dope, and that Lou's singing, like Jay makes Lou sing most of the record, and his singing is unbelievable. Like the particular delivery of his kind of high wail is like, I mean, to me, it's way better than Michael Stipe. It's way better than all that shit. And I just can't believe nobody picks up on how good that first record is. But if you go back to Severed Lips, the way it's like just the lonely guitar and the snare, pop, 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 and then that massive synth, it's like, what fucking genre is that?
Yeah, no,
what is
well, and that feeling, of like it's like tapping into this ageless, ancient knowledge or so. I don't know. I know what you mean. Like and that feeling of, I think like I think I found my place, or I found this thing that I didn't even know was inside of me. And it's like, I don't know. I kind of get, I kind of get goosebumps even thinking about like my own memories of that feeling of when like around that age when it's, and it's one of those things like when it, because again, it's like I remember feeling that probably 12, 13, 14 years old, and here I am 30 plus years later, and I was right. That was my thing. Like I found it then, and apparently I knew it's changed and evolved, but it's that original moment is, and if I think about it, I get pretty, like I said, I get pretty emotional about it. So it's
Well, you were just merely lucky in the Confucius saying, prayed that you live in interesting times. Like you were just merely lucky that that's the thing about being a fan that's so beautiful, I suppose, is like I'm watching the one of the big Woodstock documentaries right now, and it's so cool to like revisit those things without kind of all the cultural baggage that we saw them
mhm.
with when we were kids. And I mean, imagine how those hippies felt when they were like fucking setting across the country to go meet their people, the
Yeah,
people they'd never been around ever. They'd been beaten by their dad. They were, black in Alabama, and they were going up to upstate New York, and they were listening to fucking, you know, maybe something really cliche on their they didn't
right.
even have fucking headphones, but they were like they were listening to like the anthems, the California Dreamin', the like, if you're going to San Francisco, they were listening to these things. um Bridge over troubled water, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm,
when they
mhm.
heard Bridge over troubled water, they probably that some of those people had positive reactions because they woke up at Woodstock and they were surrounded by 500,000 people that were nonviolent, and they were shocked that they had like this. They had lived, they prayed and they lived in interesting times. You were surely just lucky that you
Yep,
lived in the same time as Jim Shepard and 703 and all these things. That's your, are you going
yeah,
to San Francisco? And so it's
absolutely.
like, there's something about the positive power, right? It's the redeeming, like, oh, there's a way of life for people like me. There's other people like me. They brush their teeth around the same time. You know, fucking Einstein was probably, still alive when we were born.
Right.
The Venn diagram. There's some overlap there, but then there's a darkness in art too. There's like when you're listening to Severed Lips and you're 13, there's a dark pull, and there's a part of you
Mhm.
that's wondering, I'm 13, I don't know where I'm headed. Am I going to kill myself? I'm
Mhm.
listening to this music. Am I going to kill somebody else? Like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. And that fear is so intense. And when you're hearing like a bridge over troubled water and you're looking off the fucking Golden Gate Bridge and you're thinking, and your fucking family's excommunicated you in
Yeah,
1969, there's a dark pull,
yeah,
and like the thing is, that art can save you, but it lulls you towards a dark world too.
yeah. Yeah. Well put. Well, um, moving away from the darkness, what is the song that that puts you in a better mood?
um Shit, will you tell me what I wrote?
You put cocaine. America has a problem.
Oh yeah, 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 totally. I didn't grow up with that song, but I was born in Miami, so I mean, I'm a drummer too, and like I
Huh.
was a skateboarder, so like that particular BPM, that Miami bass BPM, which I
Mhm.
believe migrated to Atlanta at some point. I don't know the year, but um that particular feeling, that Planet Rock feeling, that Egyptian Lover feeling, that Cocaine America Has a Problem feeling is like, it is very uplifting. It's a very novel feeling. You're like popping into the arcade and you're like 10 years old or something. And that's the opposite. I think that's the key to pointing out music like that, is that it's the direct opposite of that morbid Severed Lips
Mhm.
thing. And I think that I don't really understand it. It's beguiling to me. I understand sad music intrinsically. Its function makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
My dad was not a real record collector, but he loved music, and he was talented. He hung with like Stephen Stills and even Bee Gees, like Hall and Oates. He hung with everybody, Fred Neil, and he he was an incredible singer, but he had no discipline. He didn't have any interest in like getting better at guitar and shit. But I remember him saying specifically to me about like the specific, like traveling in Morocco and traveling in South America, and like telling me about like this specific strain of like South American folk music was so deeply melancholy. It made him feel so good, you know, like it's weird to think back that my dad even shared that with me, because it wasn't like a very sensitive guy in that way. But like the more morbid music makes so much fucking sense to us as practitioners and listeners. But when you get into like 120 BPM, like Miami bass, it's just a bizarre artifact. Like I don't, and hip hop in general, like as someone who loves to make it, it's like that. It's the feeling that comes over you when you listen to it is so it's weirdly life affirming.
Yeah.
It like picks you up and it makes you feel kind of like there's shit to do today. You know, you got shit to go do. And like there's something really nice about that, whether if it's you got to go roller skating, you got to go sell drugs, whatever. It doesn't matter, even if it's a dark activity. It's what Sartre and Viktor Frankl would say is like, man, search for meaning. You got a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's something unconsciously embedded in hip hop that is like, you've got shit to do. It's not morbid. It's not like, oh, shut the whole thing down. It's not Bill Fay.
Right.
You know, it's not like
right.
Today might be the day I'm going to kill myself. It just doesn't have that fat on it. It's lean, mean, and there's something extremely refreshing about that feeling, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to describe it. And yeah, that track just the beat and the bass on that, I yeah, it just gets me. It makes me happy and want to go. Yeah, like they said, get out there and just get done the shit I need to get done. Which is, you know, something I need more. You know, it's like I need that motivation sometimes. Well, there isn't an answer for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's objectively the best song of all time?
So I didn't answer that.
Well, when I send out the questions for people who don't know, I have kind of an explanation there of, you know, obviously this is a big tongue in cheek because there is no right answer for this, but I used to say, like, if an alien showed up and you wanted to show them the height of sonic achievement, what would it be?
It's funny you say it that way, because I use the like if an alien showed up thing in my thinking often, because I can think of how many, you know, most of the 10,000 things on Earth that they would encounter would be deeply embarrassing and humiliating for us. But I don't know. I mean, for best song ever or whatever, I think my answer was that it's probably a classical,
right,
you know, piece that I have never heard yet. But there's something. I'm not actually, when you put it in those grandiose terms, I feel kind of like, you know what? I'm gonna like pass on being the human being that greets the alien with something, but in a funny way, I think would be kind of dope to like give him like a George Jones cut. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like make them have to deal with like, not white lightning, but something just fucking ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because he is the greatest country singer of all time for sure. Like he embodies like this sound that like is so human, so American, so Southern. God. I would just love to see an alien grapple with that, kick back and like pop a whiskey and just like get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would. What a way to introduce an alien to like the human race. It's like, all right, you got to sit here and listen to fucking George Jones and process this. That's a movie I'd want to watch.
Well, I'm gonna go with that for now.
I love it. No, hey, do you have like a particularly favorite George Jones song?
I mean, I think that I'm accidentally bringing him up because when me and my friend Duncan Trussell and my friend Dave McLean went to India in 1998, we we were rowing down the Ganges on too many drugs, and I overdosed. But before I sort of lost my mind, I had a Walkman in my hand on the boat going down the Ganges. This thick brown water, and there was some bizarre blind dolphin like attacking our boat, and dead bodies on the shore, and wolves eating them and shit. And that was real. And I was perilously high, and I had a Walkman, and I decided to play From the Window Up Above, I think, by George Jones, or She Thinks I Still Care. And we were all singing, I think it was She Thinks I Still Care, which is, I mean, a genius song, which I
Yeah.
doubt he wrote. But I mean, fave George Jones, there's too many, but man, I mean, all those songs like Walk Through This World with Me and you know, I mean, it's too long of a list, but She Thinks I Still Care is the one that me and Dave McLean would sing together while we were hanging out in India. So I guess I have a really fond relationship with that one.
I like that one. That's good. I'll put that one on the playlist that I make for these. That goes along with these episodes. All right. Well, on a totally different tangent, what's a song you used to love, but now, if you hear it or you think about it, it doesn't do it for you. It's kind of cringeworthy.
I'm guessing did I put Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Specifically Night Train, but I think you could pick
Well,
both.
I think that, yeah, Night Train's actually a really good song. That's why I put it, because it's like, it's frustrating because I've told this story before, but I can never remember where. But one of the great moments of my life as a kid, like, I must have been 11. I was over at, I want to say it was like Jonathan Mason's house, and I was watching Guns N' Roses perform live on some big award show or something on network TV. So, I don't know what year that was. And I was sitting there just rapt, and I was watching Axel, how the metal dudes think they have to run full speed across the stage constantly to engage like the stadium, which is probably true. That's probably what you have to do.
Right.
And like, he's got those weird little biker shorts on, and like the puffy, like weird, like old, like, film noir ladies, like puffy coat,
Yep.
and like a NWA hat or something, and a bandana in his pocket or something. And he's just running, screaming, "They're out to get me," or some shit. And I was just looking at him like, I was like, this is it. You know what I mean? I was like 11. Right. And I was like, this is as fucking sick as it gets. It was so punk for my 11-year-old understanding. And I think my friend's dad just walked through the room, turned left, looked at the screen, was like, that guy's a fucking idiot or something. And I've still grapple with that moment. I was like, it shocked me. I was like, that, it felt like he was saying like, Moses, or like,
right,
Martin Luther King Jr. I was like, but he's the guy, I was like, how can you say that? Aren't you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, this shit is raw,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, I think at the same time I was just about to see all those skate videos. I think Guns N' Roses and one Metallica one had hit MTV, and that was, I mean, people don't really like wax on that a lot, but like from where I stood as I was entering 7th grade, that one video changed the world. From where I stood, I was like, that was easily the most atonal like somewhat non-melodic, like arty, bizarre music that had ever been on TV, as far
Yeah.
as I understood it. Maybe since like, you know, you know, Pierre Henry had been on some black and white TV show in the 30s. But like seeing one, especially, I think it was a coincidence that that was the song that got on TV. I think it was a coincidence that Metallica were at that point of their career. I think it was a coincidence that they had the black and white video with the Johnny Get Your Gun, or whatever the fuck that movie was, with the
Mhm.
dude, as a
Mhm.
torso. And I mean, I think it was a coincidence that all the elements came together in that year to create that sort of ground floor moment. But shit was never the same after that. When I saw one, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you can do double bass drums and all this
Yeah.
shit. I didn't know a lot of that stuff at age 11 or whatever. And so my point is that, like, seeing Guns N' Roses, and I still think, I bet there's parts on Lies that to this day I would I'd probably vouch for, because I mean, I know I rip off some of that stuff, like some of where they're trying to be the Stones, but they're kind of like doing it in this really acoustic, laid back, slightly heroin-y way,
Mhm.
but it's very American, it's very redneck and kind of Hesher. I think there's something kind of powerful about that. In fact, when I got Lies, the tape, I got it. I felt like it was the day it came out, and my mom drove me to Record Bar in the '80s or whatever that was, and
Mhm.
and we put the tape in. It ka-chunked into my mom's like little Mitsubishi like tape player, and it fed in and like sat there and went woo doo doo or whatever that sound was, and then he goes.
Yeah.
It's like he screams. Somebody in the band like screams, "Hey, motherfucker! This one's this song's for your fucking mother," or something. And my mom's like,
Uh-huh.
"Whoa!" I was like, "Yes, this is so dope." It's like, I think that was Mama Ken, actually, because I was a big Aerosmith fan too, and they covered Aerosmith. That was a big cosmological connection there. I was like, 11-year-old, got your Jimi Hendrix tape, your Led Zeppelin tape, your Aerosmith tape, and that's all you can afford. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right. Exactly. Um, yeah, God. I, I'm still thinking about one. I remember the first time I saw that, it blew my mind. I think that was the first time I ever heard finger tapping, or that I recognize, like, and I can still play that riff. That's like one of the first things I remember learning that on a guitar. And it's like one of the
Right.
few things I can still play it, but I can't play the rest of
I
the
think,
solo, but I can do the
I
finger
mean,
tapping.
I'm sure Kirk Hammett gets probably the appropriate shine from time to time, but I think that Kirk was there's something about that guy that was so special.
Yeah.
The like Hetfield and dudes were sick and great, and those lyrics actually on Injustice for All, I don't know how they managed to write intelligent things, because they fucking did it for one record. But like, I mean, Burton, that guy was probably the smartest, but like, there's something about Kirk, his contribution to metal itself, but also just like the kind of fabric of that stuff sonically.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking refined and beautiful. And I meet people, and I think some dudes in Grails, I can't remember. Um, but I've met people that think he's terrible. I don't understand it. I've met people that think he's awful, but it's like, he's got a job to do. He's got little holes he's got to fill, and he puts in the squalls, and he like throws down the bends, and he does it with this melodic precision, but it's always very feminine. It's very delicate, and like, it's
Yeah.
very the
Yeah.
classical guitar touches, which I don't think he invented, because as far as I remember, wasn't he a student of, was it Satriani or something, or like, or he's a student of Steve Vai or something? I
Maybe.
can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he invented any of that stuff, but the way that he used classical guitar forms within the kind of atonal wall of that kind of cold, hard production on Injustice for All it's just unprecedentedly beautiful. It's just so pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, yeah. Totally agree. Well, okay. Speaking of people that a lot of people don't like, or some people, I don't know. What's a song that people don't like, but you love it, don't care, or something a lot of people
I
really
can't
don't
remember
like?
what I wrote. What did I write?
This is one of my favorite picks. It was "Eyeball in a Quart Jar of Snot" by Sun City Girls, one of the greatest bands to ever
Yeah,
exist.
I've definitely had people turn them off, but and probably turn that song off too. It's kind of it's kind of a thing. I think when I got really into them, I was in a very specific phase. I needed them so bad because I was living out in Portland. It's about 2000, the year 2000, 2001. And I was really alienated out there. And didn't feel I defined myself as such a East Coast kid. These days I don't give a shit and I don't think that way. But at the time I was still really young and kind of like in my own head all the time, and I just didn't think I could relate to anyone there, which was probably my own doing. And eventually I accidentally met Truman's Water, and when I met Truman's Water I was like, these dudes are my people, because I didn't really know exactly why, but back at WXYC in the early 90s, my friend was a DJ and he was like the smartest dude that I'd ever known. And he played me Truman's Water. And I was like, oh my God, there's someone else that wants to do the Eric Gaffney thing. And I was shocked. I put that little note down in my head. I was like, there's other people that understand chaos,
Yeah.
and like understand it in art. And I never pursued them. I never bought their records in the 90s, but when I accidentally met him at a house party, essentially in Portland, Oregon, that was really important for me. I mean, we recorded a lot and stuff, and we basically just get blind drunk every single night, like drunk to a point where, because I don't think we really enjoyed the world, and so like we were just blacking out the windows together and just really setting up our own little world. And they rescued me in some way, I think, but they were the ones that single-handedly burnt me the CDs and said, "Here's Moondog, here's Sun City Girls, blah blah blah," and basically they told me Sun City Girls are the greatest band in the world. This is how it is. They're the greatest band in the world.
Man.
And I was just like, how did I miss all this shit? Like, how did I not
Yeah.
know about all this stuff? And the thing was, like, not only was I from Carborough, North Carolina, essentially, we didn't have that many high-minded, underground freaks. We had Mac and we had Dexter Romweber and things, but we didn't have a Sun City Girls here, man.
Right.
We didn't have that shit. And so Sabado in their 1988 incarnation, the 7 inches and the psycho, like, Manson screaming caterwaul stuff, that was the closest I'd come to that kind of like complete violence in terms of the lo-fi movement, things like that. And that was good. That was about as Gaffney was about as extreme as you needed anyone to be. I mean, he took Sid Barrett and Skip Spence and like put some meth on that shit. And so that was great. He was my idol when I was a kid, for sure. I wanted to like go to that planet. And so when I heard Sun City Girls, I was like, oh fuck. Like, somebody just dropped the ball, didn't show me this shit, and
Right.
I'd just been living up in the mountains, the Blue Ridge Parkway, for 4 years right before I'd moved to Portland. And so there was no music scene up there. I didn't talk to a single person for 4 years. And that was a crucial period of time where I was disengaged and I missed a lot of things. And when they showed me that stuff, it was probably like sort of the first day of the rest of my life vibe where, we were starting Grails that same month, essentially, year 2000. And I just drove home, probably wasted again with Torch of the Mystics in my hand, and I came into my house, and I think Alex had moved in with me or something, and I was like, bro, we're gonna cover this song. We're gonna do this Space Prophet Dogon thing. Like essentially Truman's Water just gave me that, and I was like, oh, like we were looking for a way out of that sort of post-rock ghetto, because we had barely started the band and we were already in that ghetto. It was extremely like particular time to be a band, like the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And like on the one hand, we had Jackie O motherfucker and Schmegma in town, so that pretty much we knew that it was possible. We knew that it was
Right.
possible to make something totally like, I'm not going to say free form because we were more structured than them, but like we knew it was possible to like be a tiny band that gets out to the world and makes weird music, truly weird music. And so, but at the same time, we were in the graveyard of Godspeed. We're in the graveyard of Dirty Three, and all. And I'd never owned those records, so I was really in an awkward position. I was like, I don't really, I'm not interested. I never really liked Chicago music in the sense that it was just too clean and too sober, and I was into drug music.
Mm-hmm.
That was my music. So I never really like wanted to learn, silly time signatures and delay pedals and all that. I just had no interest in it really. But so when Truman's Water gave me that CD, it was like, oh, these motherfuckers live in Seattle. Like Sun City Girls live
Yeah.
a matter of hours away from us. Like we can think this way. We can think differently. We have the license to do this. And I think that's what set Grails off on its ultimate sort of trajectory that used rebellion as a little bit of its engine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. Um, I love Sun City. I mean, that's yeah. First time I ever heard. I remember hearing them and I was talking about this with somebody about something else the other day, but I was totally confused and enamored by it, and that is a feeling in music that I look for. I will love music that confuses me, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And it just makes me like want to know more and know everything about it. And um, yeah, Sun City Girls.
I mean, as much as we can like trash new culture and trash the kids, totally kidding. Um, like as much as we can trash the modern world, like that is one thing that I think people are finally catching up to a little bit. Like that's an attitude, sort of a punk, not no genre stance that people are catching up to now. Is
Mm-hmm.
like that's a more common understanding, and I would credit the young people for that because naturally they're born into a world where everything's been sort of done and is all right in front of you. So of course they're going to keep like recapitulating it in a really schizophrenic way and
Right.
devaluing what was supposed to be valuable and then valuing the garbagey aspects. I mean, you see it all the time. If you see kids on fucking, you know, in the underground, at least on their TikToks and things, I mean, it's just natural for them to repurpose all this stuff. And that's exactly what we did.
Mm-hmm.
I would credit, I want to take time out and I want to credit like thrifting, like thrift shop culture as like basically like the true punk field, in some ways that stretched from the 50s all the way to the 90s, and shit. And like that's the kids are timeless, right? The kids,
Yeah.
the stance, the rebellious stance, that's like kids were always that way. Nothing's new. James Dean felt the same motherfucking way. Calvin Johnson felt the same fucking way when he was thrifting for his clothes. That like all of these people, you know, I think of like Jason Lee and the like blind skate videos, like that sense of humor,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of sarcastic, like your whole world means nothing to me kind of sarcasm. That's the way the kids have always been.
Yeah.
you know? And so it doesn't matter if you're Sonic Youth or whatever, you take you take Steven Still's guitar and you string it wrong and you throw a drumstick in it and you like, you defy the
Yeah.
religion of the past, and then you create the new thing that then becomes you know, stagnant fucking tradition.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's like, I think that thrifting mentality applies to the Sun City Girls specifically, because more than these other bands we're talking about, even because they take what they want and they use what they want and then they reblend it the way they want and they don't give a shit, you
Right.
know. So there's no, I mean, even Sabato went down the hallway of like commodification, or tried to find a way to get people to understand them, which, maybe it was destiny that it didn't work. uh I think about that, not a lot, but I feel like what taught me that lesson is that I lived down the street from Colin Malloy from the Decemberists when Grails were kind of really getting going. And I just remember, like, it felt like his house and his car just got bigger and bigger, and mine just stayed the same. And it's not a slight at all. He was always actually really nice to me, but what I was pursuing in my life, what I was trying to do with my life and with music, I never realized as a kid was was as obscure as it was. I didn't
Yeah.
care, I guess. And so I woke up day after day, year after year, just being like, why does nobody care about this shit, that I care about?
Right.
And to this day, I mean, Holy Sons is like, I don't even know how many records I've made. It's like, it's so outside of fashion. I guess I assumed that people were going to get that, like, being outside of fashion is itself like fashionable, but they don't. They always stay in the safe zone. They always stay in the safe zone. And so I'm still out here, on my island, but I think that when I saw Colin Malloy reach great levels of financial success and stuff, it taught me something that I needed to understand in, say, 2004 or 5 or whatever that was,
Mm-hmm.
2005 or 6. I realized if your music sounds like that, like sounds more like Pavement, everyone can like it. That had never occurred to me. You know what I mean? I thought like, if music was radical and good, that was good enough. But
Right.
when I started to swallow it, I realized, like, oh, I didn't set up a template for everybody to like it, and it's not my interest, so my hands are tied. It's just not something I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm still kind of like recalibrating, trying to think about how I approach the world, but the world has spoken. I am old enough now. The world has spoken, and they do not need most of the music that I make. You know what I mean?
I I know that feeling in every part of my body. Yes. But and even, having somewhat come to terms with that, it's okay, well, I'm going to still keep fucking making it. Like,
Yeah, I think as artists, like, you must reach a let's say like a 7-year cycle or something. But there's got to be some like moment where every few years you sort of like have to look in the mirror and be like, does this make any fucking
right.
sense? But then you wake up the next day and you're like, I must go on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there are days where it's like, well, it doesn't make any fucking sense, but I got to do this because this is what I can't. And I mean, yeah, I can't stop myself in some ways, for better or
I would
worse.
say talk to me in like 10 years, because then I'll really know.
Yeah.
I'll really know how to explain to you whether it's even worth doing,
Right.
because at this point, as of today, I've got songs on my computer I'm about to flip around in this chair and work on that make my life make sense.
Yeah.
They make me happy. I feel like I'm doing some of the best work of my entire life right now. But I think in 10 years, I'll probably be like, you know what? Maybe it was all a pipe dream. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just we'll have to talk then.
I know that feeling. I mean, that's I've had that conversation with my wife. With it's like I feel like some of the stuff I'm doing right now is the best work I have ever done, and is the like, and I don't know what that counts for in the grand scheme of things. I know it feels good for me. It helps me make sense, like understand my place in this world and all these things. But yeah, yeah. 10 years from
Well,
now, let's talk.
the gate of bitterness always stands there ready for you to walk
Yeah.
through it. You know, you can go through that anytime if you want.
Yep.
And people like us can sit and talk about how we're not making as much money as we probably should all day long, but nobody wants to hear that shit and it's not
Yeah.
interesting. So it's like you just all you have is the work. You
Yep.
know, just keep putting that energy, and that's ultimately my greatest engine, is that I get wildly angry but have been able to route it into the
Yep.
songs. And I can tell you from experience, those songs that people come to me and year after year, you know, I'm talking, I've been making records a long time and people still come to me and they talk about certain records, certain songs that are very, very old now. And that was funded by anger. Like
Yep.
that was funded by isolation. That was funded by alienation. So I can tell you that there are ways to transmogrify the darkest feelings into
Yeah.
something of great use, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Totally feel that. Okay. Well, we're gonna do the two big ones. We're gonna do the two in the home stretch here. So the next question is, what is the song that means the most to you? And it's not necessarily because of the song itself, but you associate it with something or someone that like an experience or something that's like so really important.
I know I keep saying I can't remember what I wrote, but I like this because it feels very interactive.
So
What did I write?
this was Chords of Fame.
Oh yeah, I was shooting from the hip on. I don't really know why I chose that, and that's why I chose it. I just thought it'd be good to choose something that I had no conscious narrative on. I mean, I heard that song in it was like ninth going into 10th grade. I was sort of the hardcore kid at Chapel High School, which meant nobody knew what I was on about. They had no interest in what I liked, and nobody cared about, you know, Warzone tapes
Right.
or something.
Right.
So I was in my own world, but every day I had to go play in the jazz band. It was like one way I could get a decent grade because the stage band teacher was kind of a father figure and really really liked me. And so even if I wasn't good on drums yet in ninth grade, he'd give me a passing grade. And you know, it was a place you could go. You actually got to, instead of math class, you actually got to go learn Chuck Mangione, and you got to learn advanced funk techniques. Not that I was the best student or anything, but it changed my life. I mean, being in that jazz band was like probably 50% of like how I learned how to play drums. And then ironically, the other drummer, I had come in at ninth grade and I was terrible. I couldn't barely play. And there was a guy named Alexi Rodriguez who was the other drummer, essentially. I think they had to pull him in off of sax or something because he was such a good drummer and I wasn't cutting it. Like I could do Sweet Georgia Brown, but I couldn't do, you know, any Chuck Mangione. And so he had all the techniques, but he was a skinhead, but he was like a Jewish Puerto Rican skinhead. And he was like fucking the greatest drummer I've ever seen in my life. And he was in 10th grade. And he blew my mind. He like everything he did, if it was down and up the drums, in Chuck Mangione songs or whatever. And he would make this face like he was fucking gonna rip your face off. It was so real. My drum style comes from him. Like everything I do, every night in Ohm, every night in Grails, everything I do was stolen from him as he was juxtaposed in the jazz band. So everything I learned and understood as highbrow communication, looking at the Rhodes player, looking at the sax player, and talking to each other, everything I learned and everything I still do comes from that moment and seeing that. And he actually went on to be the drummer. They started a band called Catharsis. So they became legendary hardcore kids. And he went on to play drums in Prong.
Jeez.
And I think even like 3 Inches of Blood, but I don't even know anything about like Warped Tour music. So I don't know what those bands are called, but like he became pretty famous, and I will go down saying he's one of the greatest drummers that's ever lived on the planet. He's just unreal.
Wow.
But so the jazz band, that sphere, that world, that was my entire understanding of music as it sounds. But music for what it means was something that I couldn't talk to anybody about except for a couple kids that understood hardcore and understood message-based music. So it would be my best friend, Nick Holscomb, and my other best friend, Nora Rogers, who still lives here in town. And so those people I could talk to, like, I could build an aspiration for what I wanted music, what I wanted it to be, you know, and they understood and were on the same page. It was very powerful. And then basically Lou Barlow was like thrown out of Dinosaur Jr. The whole legend began, you know, he's on the radio all the time just talking mad shit, like violently angry at Jay Mascis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was along for the ride, and I heard every interview. I heard the whole thing, and Sebado started, and I was just kind of captivated. I was like, what is this? What's happening? And then the show tape came out. The legendary show tape came out where he said, you know, figuratively pissing on your grandpa, you know, screaming bloody murder things. And then like they'd run out on stage, and he made a comp tape of all the snippets of intros he had made, you know, 3 dumpy guys, you know, three idiots with no fashion sense, 7-0 or whatever. He would just every night he would intro. And one of the intros was buried under a cloud of hiss in the tradition of Daniel Johnston, or whatever. And I was just like, okay, I'll go buy that. So I just went down to the store, got it spooky, came home. I mean, 9th grade, I was like, this is the most ridiculous, impossible to listen to music I've ever heard in my life. I'd never heard Schmegma, you know?
Right.
I'd never heard any of that shit. 9th grade, I mean, think about how fucking young you are if you meet a 9th grader now. And like grappling with Daniel Johnston and Jed Fair was like, that was kind of my first test. It was like my first thing where I was like, whoa, like, what have I stumbled into? And I had the CD in my hand, It's Spooky, in jazz band. And there was a boombox, and I put it on. I was like, you know, like, you guys should check this out.
Yeah.
Like, just like about to crack up, you know, like, because I'm about to fucking play them fucking Chords of Fame or something, you know, because they covered it. So that was my introduction.
Wow.
To Chords of Fame. And I still, there are some nights when I still cover it, not often, but I covered it like a few years ago. It felt like I was in a fucking stadium opening for the Mountain Goats somewhere in like Texas or something. And John from the Mountain Goats came running out and was like, fuck yes, Chords of Fame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my story with that song is just it stretches throughout my life, and the only reason it came to the top of my head at all was just because go back, listen to
Yeah.
those lyrics, dude. That shit is the gnarliest stuff. I mean, John Lennon would be hard pressed to write that one.
Yeah. For real.
It exposes the underbelly of like the dream of a child becoming crushed by the industry, and it stays true to this fucking year. You know, that song will like tell you the tale of Van Gogh or something. You know.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a fucking awesome story. All right, last one.
We started at Alexi Rodriguez for that one.
We took a fucking trip on that one. Started with Alexi Rodriguez, ended up opening for the Mountain Goats. And John Darnielle being stoked about Chords of Fame, which that all tracks.
Right.
All right. What is, at least in this moment of time, what is your favorite song?
Whew. I mean, dude, you got to catch me at like any random moment of any day. But to be honest, I don't remember what I wrote, but I'm just going to say right now, I've returned to Mission in the Rain by Jerry Garcia.
Hell yeah. There you go.
I watched the end of the Grateful Dead documentary like last night, and it's so sad. It's like it shook me. It's so sad. I won't spoil it for anybody, but the last episode was like intense, and I ordered the Best of Jerry Garcia 5 LP box, which showed up today. So I haven't put it in yet, but I don't know. I had a crazy experience where I was out in Portland, Oregon, and my friend's father had passed away recently, and he lent me his dad's van to drive around Portland. So I knew his dad well, and I would drive around Portland, and his Jerry CD was still in the fucking thing. So I'd listen to the same songs his dad listened to. And it was like so timeless. Like I was out of time. Like it was so perfect. Like just existing with my friend's dad and Jerry, all this stuff at the same time. So weird. And when I got home, I was like, I actually happened to have the same black Toyota Sienna, like the same van as. So I was like, I gotta buy the CD. So I got the same CD of Jerry in '76 live, and I put it in my same van, and I'm cruising around, and it just makes me feel so good. And it's always Mission of the Rain, where I'm like, I think like, you know, people who love the Palace Brothers should just hit pause on that, go listen to that. You know, people that love a lot of that kind of downer folk stuff who've never really given Jerry a chance need to go chill with Mission in the Rain, because that's something about that song. It's hard to explain how sad it is, but there's something about Jerry that they say in the documentary. They're like, he's the messenger of dark things. You don't really think about it, but his role in the band is like he's coming to tell you something. You know, maybe like your wife has died on the fucking, you know, Lewis and Clark journey. There's something about Jerry, like his job in the band. And I was just thinking about it, I was like,
man,
fuck it. He called it the Grateful Dead for a reason. Like, he's such a wise dude, but there's something about that guy where like he knew the whole time that he was this tragic time bomb, you know, that was going to go out on a kind of gnarly note. But dude, that song is just, it's such a great song. I thought it would be cool to.
That's a great song.
Give it some shine.
Well, yeah, no, it is. I love that song. Love that song. I think that's a good song to end it on. Grails is going on tour soon, right? You guys are going to Europe. Am I right?
Yeah, we just yesterday announced we're doing Roadburn and we're starting in Greece, and we've been doing this for uh we haven't been going to Greece for 20 years, but we've been going to the Netherlands about 20 years. So it's almost like a 20-year anniversary of like we're retracing some of the steps that we first
Nice.
started going to Europe. And I mean, the last tour, we just got back a little while ago, and last tour started in Linz, Austria, which I think is where we started our first tour 20 years before. So it's really trippy for us. I mean, talk about the Grateful Dead. It's inspiring to like try to think about like your own version of dick pics and all that
Right.
stuff. It's like, I want to get into that. I'm in that period of my life. I need to start archiving
Mm-hmm.
and like thinking that way. And, it's been inspiring thinking about how they did that and recorded themselves so consistently. And obviously Fugazi
Mm-hmm.
was inspired by that somehow and things, so we're all sort of looking to these people and their MOs, to sort of carve out the ultimate way to preserve our statements, but yeah, we have an East Coast tour we just announced too. So if anybody's interested, they should go check out those, because some of those tickets might be going fast. I don't know.
Cool. Anything else you want to mention before we get out of here for people to?
Nothing important. Just my season 6 of Drifter Sympathies coming soon, and people ask me a lot about things like that. There's a new Holy Sons record going into Thrill Jockey very soon. There's a new Lilacs record coming on Temporary Residence. We're halfway through a new Grails record, and I have a brand new archival project with new Lost Decade stuff coming out. So, I mean, you just talk to me any day, and
Yeah,
you're just going to get assaulted with work.
I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's the only way I do things. There's always something. But hey, it's the way I work. So, well, I appreciate it. This was a whole lot of fun. Thanks for doing this. Once again, thank you to Emil Amos. Again, go see Grails on tour. They put on a hell of a show, and yeah, they got dates announced. I think they've finished a new record, in the process of finishing a new record. Their record from last year, unbelievable. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, that's it. You know where to find me. You know where to yell at me. Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Send me an email. Come join the Foxy Digitalis Patreon, patreon.com/Foxy Digitalis for as little as $3 a month. If you like these episodes, you get extended versions. You get them a week early, and you can get a whole bunch of other stuff over there. And it really supports the cause, and it really keeps the lights on, keeps these things going. Otherwise, until next time, keep on listening to whatever the hell you want.